Hello everybody, this is Tim from codetowrite.com, and today I want to walk you through the process of solving day number 3 of the 2018 Advent of Code. Let's have a look. So as you can see, it's already the 11th of December, but I'm still at day number 3. This is because I was quite busy for the last few days, so now I hope to catch up again. I did have a quick look at today's puzzle. It's called No Matter How You Slice It, and I will just walk you through it real quick. So you have a 1000 by 1000 piece of fabric, and you have to incorporate different claims. So you always have some sort of backstory that's not really relevant. You have to filter out which parts are the important parts of this wall of text that you have here. Thankfully, it's quite easy with this side because they are using these code brackets to indicate important stuff. So you will get a list of claims, and they look like this. They start off with an ID followed by a number sign. Then they give you some sort of two-dimensional coordinates indicated by the @ sign. And then you have this dimension like width and height. So you can see it here. ID number 123 is starting at the coordinates 3, 2. So let's count 0, 1, 2, 3, and 0, 1, 2. So here, yeah, that's correct. Should be 5 times 4 units. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4. Yeah, that works. Okay. So all of this area indicated by these number signs is occupied by claim number 1, 2, 3, and everything around just isn't. Okay, so what's the problem? Here in this second example, we do have 3 claims, and you can see here these claims are indicated by their ID. So ID 1 starting at 1, 3, which is here, and goes 4 by 4 pieces, would be this area. And you can see already, like all of these are ones, saying this belongs to ID number 1, but you do have some X's in here. Yeah, this is because if you have a look at ID number 2, which starts at 3, 1, being here, and also having the dimensions 4 by 4, you do get some overlap between the claims. So these are indicated by the X's. Yeah, these 4 squares in the middle, they do belong to ID number 1 and ID number 2 at the same time. Okay, yeah, that's just the explanation. So the question now is, how many square inches? The description says that one of these units is an inch, but it doesn't really matter. How many inches of fabric are within 2 or more claims? So what we can already get from this question is that it can be even more, like there can be even more overlap. For example, if ID number 3 would start a bit more to the top left corner, then it would overlap even more here. So yeah, at Advent of Code, you get your personalized puzzle input. So it's up to you how you solve this problem. When I started the Advent of Code this December, I had originally planned to solve them all in Emacs Lisp, or eLisp as people call it. But lately, last week, I figured I should improve and refresh some of my Python knowledge, so instead I'm using Python. Okay, so a fair word of warning. This is a blind attempt. I do not know the solution, although from the description I do have a very good idea. But I do not claim that my solution will be the most elegant or best. I'm not a professional Python programmer. I do much prefer Java and JavaScript. But I think Advent of Code is a great opportunity to learn a new language, improve your skills in a language that you don't use every day, and so on. It's very open as to how you approach the problem. You could actually just get a piece of paper and try to solve it on the paper, because all they really want from you is the numerical answer of how many pieces or inches of fabric are claimed by more than one ID. Okay, but of course we're gonna do a programmatical solution. So I already prepared this. I did download the information here, my input list. You can use some sort of like you can grab it directly from the internet if you authenticate with the Advent of Code site, but I thought it's just easier to copy it. Another thing is this is just to demonstrate how programmers, or in particular how I would approach this problem. It's not really a tutorial, although I will explain quite a lot, and it's not a solution to the Advent of Code puzzle, because your answer will be very different from mine, as this puzzle inputs will be different for you. Okay, so without further ado, let's start. First off, we wanna read the data, so we're gonna call the open function. File name is input, and since we're not gonna change it, open it in read-only mode, calling readlines, and there we already have it. This list should contain all of these inputs as a list separated by the lines. I can show you what I mean by printing it out and see if everything works correctly. That looks very good. So last ID will be 1381. Let's see if that's correct. Yes, that looks very good. Okay, perfect. So since we do have some, we start a comment here. So we do have some 2D array. I just start a small version of it. Yeah. So this would be a 3x3 array, so much smaller size than the 1000 by 1000 array that we actually need. My idea is to initiate the array with zeros only, like that, and then have some sort of mapping of the coordinate x equals 1, y equals, let's say, 0. So this would be starting to count by 0 in computer science. So 0, 1 for x, and we're already at the correct y position being 0. This would be the star, like the current field. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase this number for every of the claimed fields. So I'm going to pass this input, go to the position, claim this area, and by claiming I will just increment the number here. So as for now, I do not need to know which ID actually claims that field. They're just asking for how many of these coordinates are claimed by by 2 or more well, IDs. So I do not need to keep track of that. So that's making the problem quite a bit easier. Let's create the array. Just gonna call it R. You should maybe, like, this is a very small program, just a little script. If you have bigger problems and projects, you should have more descriptive variable names. But as I said, this will not be an optimal, very good solution. It will be just for demonstration purpose. Okay. Let's start with a smaller one. Just to see if I got everything correct here. As I said, I'm not a professional Python programmer. But for creating this two-dimensional array, I'm using something that's called list comprehension. Basically, what you do here is you take a value or default value as you like it, and then you say, okay, I want to have a list. This is like your iterator in that list. You don't really care about it. You just want a list that's 10, that has the size of 10, and you want each item of this list to have the value 0. And then because we need a two-dimensional array, you're going to repeat this process of creating a list another 10 times. So you have 10 items in a list, and each of these items themselves will be a list filled with zeros. Maybe it's easier to just show. Let me just show you real quick. There you have it. 10 lists consisting of 10 items each, all being initialized by 0. Okay, so far so good. However, we do need lists of much greater size. Actually, for developing right now, it's easier to solve the problem at a at a smaller scale, and then try to scale that solution up to your real problem. So for the time being, I will just go with this smaller problem. And in fact, instead of my input, I will now go and take this test input. Usually at Advent of Code, they provide you some test cases with the solutions. However, this is not really the case here, but the example is fairly easy. So we know that for this test input, the solution should be 4. We can see that by just looking at the problem. Okay, so I will create a new file. New file called test input. Just put in everything. Make sure you have no trailing new lines or white spaces or whatever. And then in solution.py, I'm going to modify this line to read from test input, please. Okay, everything should be still good. So after creating this array, where we will keep track of the number of claims for each individual cell, we will realize that array of 0 of 1 equals 1 does not reflect x0, or let's take this example. Let's take this example real quick. We will realize that it does not nicely translate to what we thought of, because this does not mean x equals 0, y equals 1, rather it means x equals x equals 1, y equals 0. Rather it will translate to x equals 0, y equals 1. So instead of changing this field, we will actually change this field. Show you real quick. You see, this field is different instead of this field. So you could just think of this 2D array to be somewhat mirrored at its main axis, but instead you can also just write a small function. We're going to define a function that's called setVal. Accepts x, y, and value parameters, and here we're just going to take care of swapping these coordinates around. Okay, so if we now call setVal of 1 and 0 to 1, then it should represent what we thought of earlier. Let's just call it, and there we have it. So instead of this cell, now the value will be set correctly. Okay, so far so good. We don't need any of that. Now let's get back to this input. So it will be important to parse each line of this. So we can be sure to iterate over it and then somewhat process that line. And actually, let's just write a small function. Just some renaming. So we will simply call process entry for each of these entries and then move on with our life. So in this method, we want to get this string, and the string will be stored in entry and then passed to our function. So let's have a look. How are we gonna do it? So, okay, we could start. Well, we don't really need any of this as of now. We are more or less just interested in these two fields. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna split it at the white spaces, yeah, and then we always should get a list where we only have to check the third and fourth entry. Okay, let's see if that works. So we could use a reg expression, a regex. I don't think we need it. These inputs are fairly consistent and easy. Let's just have a look. Yeah, perfect. So we need this entry without the new line. Okay. Oops. Okay, copy that, comment that. So the starting coordinates will be, we need entry fragments. Okay, just doing what we did before. And to get the list, so the starting coordinate will be entry fragments 2, and the dimension will be entry fragments 3. Okay, so we still need to not sanitize, but this input will not be exactly what we need, as you can see here. Here we still have this comma sign and the like the double point or colon, and here we still have this new line and the X. So just keep going. So what we could do, like this, this is fairly easy to parse, but so we could write another function called like process starting coordinates and or something like that to get the numerical values that we need. I'm just gonna keep it very simple here. So let's say start code y. Yeah, that should be fine. So now start code x should have the x coordinate and y should be holding the y coordinate. Still, we want to get rid of the colon sign here that we don't need. Okay, so we now need to remove that colon sign. We're gonna do this by calling the replace function, and I hope this works. This should be considered a string. Let's just see. Okay. Yes. Let's see what we get. Okay. We see that we still somewhat have the colon sign here, but the coordinates otherwise seem to be fine. Now let's see why do we? Oh, right. We need to reassign this. And there we go. Perfect. Oops. Okay, so now we have the starting and ending coordinates. Let's just for the fun of it, play around with that already. So we're gonna call setVal for each of these. And now you already see, we don't exactly know the value. In the beginning it will be quite easy, we can just set it to 1, but what if it's already like occupied by one of the inputs? Then it should be 2, but we would need to look it up here every time. So instead of setting the value, we will create another function. It's just called incrementVal. Oops. X and Y. So what's gonna happen here is basically this. But we're gonna use the increment assign operator. I'm not sure if we actually need this. We're just gonna keep it around for a while. But for our approach, incrementVal seems to be much better. Perfect. So after we process that list at the end of our program, of course, we want to have a look at it. For line in array print line. Alright, we do have a problem. Process entry incrementVal. List indices must be integers, not string. Okay. So what's gonna happen here? Well, we did all this processing of strings, and our resulting start x and y, there are strings as well. But if you want to change a value in some array of any dimension, then these coordinates, they should be numbers or integers. So I think you could just change it like that. No, that's not working. I really like that in JavaScript. They usually get away with stuff like this. Okay, but in Python you can just call the int method or a function. And we're gonna. I'm thinking, should we change it here or in the function itself? But I think it makes more sense to keep the number equivalent around. So let's do it here. I'm gonna do some refactoring here. Okay, that should be fine. Let's see. Oh yes. Okay, so we do have one free. Let's translate to this field. Free one. There we have it. And 5, 5 without counting. I just trust this to be 5, 5. So everything works perfectly fine until here, until this point. Okay, so what's the next thing we need? Well, we need to have a look at these dimensions. It's gonna look pretty similar to what we did with the coordinates. So, without further ado, we're just gonna call them width and height, because that's pretty much what they resemble. Well, it's gonna work the same way. Also here, we will have to, again, remove this new line character and this x. So removing the x is quite easy because we need it to split, and by splitting the x gets removed. Let's remove the new line. Probably you have to escape it. I'm not quite sure here. You could also just remove all white spaces. It doesn't look like he likes my syntax. I don't know why that is. That's fairly regular syntax. Oops. Just have a look. As I said, it will not be the most optimal solution. I'm not a professional in Python. I just want to walk you through how to do this, or how I would do this. Okay. It seemed to work out pretty well. Just let me have a look at it. Okay. 4, 4, 4, 4, 2, 2. Oh, that looks very good. Perfect. So again, oops, gonna need it as a number. So especially in Python, you can do all of this a bit more elegant. Like you do have this very useful tuple data type, and I think you can probably also call functions like this on tuples. So you could maybe do something. Let me just see. I mean, we're here to have a bit of fun, learn something new. Let me see if that works. I mean, somewhat. I could see it working. Not really. An integer is required. Okay. So why isn't that working? Can't you use it on tuples apparently? Let me see. Maybe like this. Still have to call the function twice then. Well, that seems to be working fine. Okay. Good. I still don't trust this. Let me see. Let me see. Could you please? Oh, no. That's not what I wanted. Oh, some spelling error here. Okay. Yeah, it looks fine. In Python, you do some things, or you can do some things like quite elegant in a few lines only, but it requires some practice and deep knowledge of the language, which I don't have at the moment. Okay, so far everything's good. Now we do know where to start with our claim and which dimensions it will have. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a loop iterating over the width and height, starting at the coordinates and going to increment all the values in between. Okay. Can't you? Does that work? Let me see. Oh yes. Okay. So Python does have this REPL, which is called read, evaluate, print loop, and it's really helpful. You can just check out quickly if how to use a function or the behavior or something. So I did that right now to see if this range function accepts 2 parameters and not only one, because the Visual Studio Code IDE was just hinting me at the latter option, where the beginning of the range would always be 0, just like what we used to create this 2D array or 2D list. But that's not very helpful for my case. So I can actually use it like that. So the range will be the starting x coordinate and ending at the starting x plus the width, and equally for the y and height. So I'm gonna do it like this. And all we're gonna do is increment the values in between. Okay. Looks very good to me. I think it might already work. Let's have a look. Oops. Like that. Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, you don't need the these brackets here. Oops. Okay. Yeah, that looks very, very good. Because in the example, if you remember, you had like this was the first ID. This was the second, and then you had an overlap of 4 squares in the middle. And just to test out if we got everything correct, I will add one extra ID that will occupy all of this fourth row. So it's going to start at 0, 3 and go on for 10 units. ID number 4 at 0, 3. Oh, that's the other way around. That looks very good. So what was a 2 before? That was a 3. And you have all of this. Okay, so I think our solution is ready. Just one more thing we need. It's to count the entries that are 2 or higher. So what we're going to do. So we could manually do this. And I think we actually will. So it will be quite difficult to output the 1000 by 1000 array, because the screen is simply not big enough. So we will not do that. We will not even attempt it. Instead, we will use this loop to count entries that are bigger than 2. So for each line, for each entry in this line, count equals 0. So it's going to be quite an easy approach. Just what comes to your mind first. Write it down, see if it works. That seems to be working pretty well. Let's put back the test input to what it was before. So the solution should be 4 now. Okay, so just one more thing to do. We're going to our solution and change back the input to our problem again. So instead of the test input, we're now reading the actual input again. Might now take a second, I don't know. Oh, okay. All right, yeah. I should also make the array big enough. Okay, so this is our input. Let's see what we get. All right, right answer on first try. Very good. So Advent of Code always has like 2 parts. The first part being a bit of an easier puzzle, and the part 2 then, yes, being a bit of a more difficult task, because now, as you can see, we need to have a look at which of these claims do not overlap. So we need to assign or to keep track of not only the numbers here, but also somehow which claim did request the square. So now we need to keep an idea of that. So how can you do that? Well, a simple idea that comes to mind is to keep a dictionary, and instead of like this array, we just have a dictionary, and the keys of that dictionary might be the coordinates and the values, being an array of IDs that have claimed this cell, or this field. Okay, so something like that, and so on and so on. So as you can see, I'm not really doing much of a software engineering approach or trying to optimize any solutions. I'm just trying to get the solution quick and dirty. Okay, so that will be one possibility. Another possibility would be to initiate this array with even more arrays. So now we would have a 3-dimensional array. And I think I like this idea even better. And actually, see, now we can use this set value function. That's really nice. So instead of just storing the count of IDs that we're going to occupy a square, we're going to keep track of them. So I'm going to call this set value function, and since we wanna, we can do it like this. Yeah, I think it works very well, because this should return this array, and then we're just going to append a new value. Is it called append in Python? Let me check. Again, we're using the, of course you can just look on Stack Overflow, but there's no fun in that, right? No? Huh. Okay. I think I'm doing something wrong here. No, okay, it's working fine. How did you exit this again? Oh yeah. Okay, we're just gonna append these IDs here. So let me see. We actually never kept track of these IDs. So let me have a look. It's just the first entry. Okay. Let's keep the IDs. So the good thing is we can basically just keep most of this here. We're gonna have to change this to set value instead and pass our ID. And this one needs to be a little different. So instead of like counting these entries here, we're gonna have a look at the length. I think you do it like this in Python. And we're just interested in the ones with exactly 1. Because all the other ones will be occupied by more than one field. Or not at all. That's also possible. But we don't want to know these either. So let's just have a look at this this old example, at the test input example. So our result should be number 3 here, because as we saw in the previous examples. That's the only one, not overlapping with anything else. Okay. We still have some sort of output that we don't need here. Let me see. For entry, okay, so these are the lines. Yes, because it's now a three-dimensional array. Okay, for all the lines, for all the entries in that line. So we're also gonna need to. Well, it's getting a bit messy, as you can see, but these items are basically the arrays keeping track, or the lists. It's called lists in Python. Are the lists that keep track of the claims. So let's have a look again. And we don't get any output. It's not too good. So why is it? Let me see. Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah. Again, we did not. Well, I did not update the values properly here in that array. Now it should be fine. Why isn't it? Oh. No, I don't think you need to do that. I didn't need to do it here. Let's see. No, you don't. Okay, so that was not the problem. Okay. So what else is a problem then? So these should actually be lists. But they don't seem to be lists, do they? Back here they look more like a list, but they only had one entry, which is not correct. Okay. Let me have a look. Okay. Oh, right, because we iterate these inner lists, but we don't want to. Just want to have a look at them. Okay. And let me see. I just realized that we will not get the correct solution like that. Because while these entries are correct, 1, 2, 3 would not be the correct solution, regardless of how many shared or non-shared cells it will now occupy, because it does overlap at least at one point with another ID. So can we do it instead? Let me see. Well, we just have to go through all the IDs, I guess. Right, so to figure out which of these IDs do not overlap, we're gonna create a dictionary, and in this dictionary we will keep track of all IDs that we encountered in our input, and going to just figure out how many overlaps they have. So here in our process entry loop, or process entry function, which is getting quite a bit bloated, you might want to already start about thinking splitting that up if you were to code a proper project here. But we don't need that. We just do it quick and dirty. So I'm going to say ID lookup of this ID string and initiate it with 0, as there are no overlapping like cells or claims at this point. And then when we will go through our to the list here, we're going to have a look if the length of that entry is bigger than 1, then we're going to increase the IDs of the counters of this lookup. Okay, so for item, or let's say for ID, an entry, increase the ID lookup. Okay, should be pretty good. Let's just have a look at this ID lookup. Okay, so number 3 has no overlaps, number 2 has 4 overlaps, and number 1 has 4 overlaps, exactly as we expected. So last thing, for key and ID lookup, if ID lookup of that key, of that key equals 0, then we have found our winner, and we're going to print it out. Let's remove that. So look, now, so the output should be the 3, and there we go. Perfect. Okay, so now we can change everything back to our actual input. Don't forget to increase the range this time. Don't need that. Well, you see, we don't have much comments here, just some ideas we wrote down. But it doesn't matter, because we will never touch this code after submitting the solution. And this should be our solution. Let's see what the website thinks about it. I wonder if we should I think we should remove this number sign. Okay, perfect. So we just collected the second gold star of the day and completed day number 3. Yes, I hope you enjoyed this little video. As I said, it's not a great solution. It's not the best solution, and it was somewhat of a semi-tutorial where I explained a lot, but probably not enough for a complete beginner to understand everything. I just wanted you to show how I would approach a problem like this, how you can find a quick and dirty solution to something like the third quiz or the third task of the Advent of Code. And yes, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Bye bye.